friends are synths.
Hello, I am All My Friends Are Synths, and I love gear. You might be wondering why I've got this handheld microphone and why I'm trying to look like Jorb. However, to that, what I would say first of all is that he clearly copied me with the fucking hair. And secondly, the whole reason I've got this set up is actually for a particular reason, and that is to demonstrate a brand new audio interface from a company called Comica. And so all of this will make sense in due course. Now, I know that audio interfaces are not the sexiest topic in the world of music production. They're definitely not the sexiest topic in the world of creativity generally. But if you want to be a music producer, or you want to start a podcast, or maybe you just want to have an OnlyFans or something like that, whatever the case might be, you're going to have to think about how you record your voice or whatever various other sounds that you need to use in your productions, and then share them with the world so that your adoring fans or subscribers can see them and like and subscribe and all that kind of thing. Now, true, you might never reach the dizzying heights of success like I have on YouTube, but it's still going to be an important consideration. Now, Comica are a company that are based out in Asia, and as far as I can tell, they've got a particular focus on consumer electronics for portable recording, so things like lavalier microphones and all that kind of stuff, but they've never made a kind of standalone audio interface before, and so they got in touch with me a few months ago and asked if I would like to cover or feature their new interface. And to be honest, at first I was kind of like, I don't know, not really, because I don't really know what I would say about an audio interface. I've got my own interfaces and audio recording devices that just kind of sit there and do what they need to do, and so it's not really a topic that I was particularly interested in. However, the more I looked at the AD5, the more I kind of began to realise that actually there are some particular features about it that would be really useful or interesting for folks in specific scenarios, including myself. So I said to them, I send it over, and if I like it, I'll do a video on it. I've been using the AD5 for the past few months. I've recorded a whole bunch of audio for some of my previous videos using it, and it has actually been really handy. So I thought I would do a video so that if you're in the market for that kind of thing, this is something you can look at and consider. In terms of audio interfaces, the AD5 has got a whole bunch of kind of things that you would expect as standard for these. It's a 2-channel input interface with a dual combi kind of XLR and 1/4" jack input on each. There's an instrument pad. There are 2 mini jack 3.5mm headphone monitoring connections. There's individual level controls. There's 2 1/4" jack output connections for connecting up to external speakers. It's got USB-C power and also USB-C data, which are separated to avoid noise and all that kind of good stuff. Now, in addition to those kind of standard features, there's clearly an intent here that this interface is used or can be used specifically or maybe particularly for people that either want to stream content online or those that want to record with, you know, an iPhone or a tablet or, you know, one of those kind of devices. This is most evident by the connections on the rear, because not only do we have separate USB-C connections for power and for data, we've also got 2 USB-C connections, which ostensibly is to allow you to connect up multiple devices, and there's also specific dedicated 3.5mm aux in and outputs, which are marked with a phone so that you can use it to route audio in and out of your mobile device. On top of that, there's a bunch of software features in there that are marketed and kind of like deliberately set aside for streamers. One of them, aptly titled Streaming Mode, kind of sums all of your audio down into mono, which I guess is helpful for people that are streaming. I am not a streamer, so I don't really know. But there's also kind of direct monitoring, loopback functions, and a whole bunch of other stuff like that. There's a denoise function in there, which essentially acts as a noise gate to remove any hiss or unwanted background noise that you might have going on. I haven't really experienced this apart from when I'm using a condenser microphone and I can hear cars and stuff in the street, which is just par for the course where I live with no insulation. Now, the one thing you say about the denoise function is that it's actually quite a hard gate, so you need to make sure that you've got quite a strong input signal, otherwise you're going to get drop-offs in your voice, or it just won't work the way that you expect it to, so be aware of that. One of the other features, which may or may not be useful depending on your own scenario, is the built-in EQ and effects. Now, to let you hear them, I'm going to enable them one by one. This is a room reverb, this is the stage reverb, and this is the hall reverb. Okay, so for me, those effects are never going to be useful because they are not the kind of effects that I would ever use. However, maybe if you stream and you wanted that kind of thing for a particular situation, then they're there. Now coming on to this microphone setup, I'm currently talking through a very, very cheap Stag professional microphone, which is basically a kind of SM58 ripoff. I bought this for about £21 a couple of years ago and plugged directly into the interface, recording into Logic, and I'm going to add some kind of post compression and stuff like that because that's what you do when you're recording your voice or other instruments for the internet. The other microphone that I've got here lurking in the corner in the shadows, which you can't really see on the frame, is a much more expensive microphone. This is a Neumann TLM 102, and part of the reason I'm demonstrating this setup is not just so you can hear the difference between two different microphones, but also to highlight the fact that each individual channel on this can have the phantom power either enabled or disabled separately, and that's actually a pretty cool feature because many of these interfaces of this kind of size anyway have to have the phantom power on for both inputs at once or off for both inputs at once, and so being able to split them like that is actually really pretty useful. Now you can hear me talking through this microphone just now. I usually wear a wee Rode mic thing, but I've decided for the purposes of this video to let you hear the mics into the interface. This is the very cheap Stag professional microphone. This is the audio from the much more expensive TLM 102 microphone. So there you go, my very unscientific test of what these things sound like. Now at this stage I have to say that I am not a streamer because my internet is shit. I also don't record onto my phone or tablet because my phone is shit. I don't have an iPhone or anything like that because I don't really want to spend £1,000 on something that I'm liable to drop down the toilet when I'm drunk. However, I have been using this in a variety of situations over the past few months, and that is because of one key feature that I have yet to name, but which I think is one of the best things about this interface, and that is that it has a built-in battery. Now at this point, I know there's going to be some people sitting at home going, well, hang on a minute, if you want an audio interface that is battery powered, why don't you just get a Zoom recorder? Because those things can do that, and they're a much more well-known and established brand. And yes, that may well be the case. I do actually have a Zoom H5 thing here, and I have been trying to use this as an interface for quite some time. However, whenever I plug it in over USB, I get this horrible ground noise that I can't get rid of even with an isolator, and so I'm forced to use it with batteries. And the problem with that is that this thing chomps through batteries like some fucking demented ghoul, and so I can never get through whatever I'm trying to record without realizing that this thing has shut down halfway through and I've lost all of my genius work. So it's not really a solution that's any good for me. So as I mentioned earlier, I have been recording music and doing things for my videos over the past few months with the AD5, so I've gotten quite a lot of use out of it in practical terms, and I have to say that generally speaking it's been great. The battery life has been good, it's done everything I want and expect it to. However, there's been a few idiosyncrasies that have highlighted themselves which I think are worth knowing about. The first is with the mute button, and I mentioned this specifically because just the other day I was recording and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't get any signal coming through. I was checking all the cables, checking Logic and all that kind of stuff, and as it transpired I had accidentally hit the mute button for both of the channels, and so there was no audio coming through. Now the reason I bring this up is because it isn't immediately obvious that the mute button is active or disactive. There is some kind of visual display, but I would love that to be a bit more clear for people like myself. Maybe a flashing red icon or something would be good, because it will save some hunting around in future, I am sure. The second thing to be aware of is kind of linked, and that is in the display. It is a touchscreen. It looks and operates quite nicely. However, there is a bit of latency with the visual display of the meters for the input levels. I've also noticed that sometimes it seems to indicate that it's peaking, when really if you look in Logic or your DAW, the input signal is just fine. So with that, you have to get used to it, and gain staging can be a bit trickier than on other interfaces with analog VU meters or, you know, kind of more LED based ones, but that hasn't been a huge issue. It's just something you kind of have to get used to. So that is the Comica AD5. It's a 2-channel USB-C audio interface with a whole host of the kind of standard features that you would expect, including some that you might not expect, particularly designed for folks that are going to be streaming maybe for the first time, also folks that are going to be recording on their mobile devices, but which is also extremely handy as a portable recorder for those of us who want to do other things on our laptops because of the internal battery, which I think is fucking fantastic. For now, what I thought I would do is play out the video with some music that I recorded specifically using the Comica AD5, so you can hear that everything apart from the drums, which are sample based so they don't go through an interface, has been recorded using the AD5, so you can hear that and kind of, you know, draw your own conclusions. For now, goodbye.